The storm had raged all night, its relentless winds howling like a pack of wolves. By dawn, the once serene beach was nothing but a wild mess of broken branches, overturned boats, and scattered debris. The air was thick with the scent of salt and the remnants of the storm's fury. The waves, once calm and inviting, now crashed against the shore with a force that could have swallowed anything in its path. The heavens themselves seemed angry. Amidst this chaos, a lone figure stumbled onto the shore, drenched and trembling. His clothes were soaked through, sticking to his body as though they were a part of him. His face, usually so sure and confident, was ashen, his eyes wide with terror. He looked like he had been through a war, his face bruised, his hands cut and scraped, and his chest heaving with labored breaths. There was something in the way he moved, as if he had been running from something for far too long. Or maybe, running toward something. This was no ordinary man. His name was Alex Grayson, a well-respected architect, a man of ambition and purpose. But right now, none of that mattered. All that mattered was the storm that had brought him to this forsaken island, to this moment where his entire life had taken a sudden, violent turn. He had no idea where he was, or how he had ended up on this desolate patch of earth. All he knew was that the life he had once known, his comfortable, predictable existence, was now shattered beyond recognition. As Alex staggered onto the wet sand, he could feel his legs giving way beneath him. The adrenaline that had been carrying him for hours, maybe even days, was starting to fade. His body was spent. The cold of the sea breeze bit at his skin, yet it was a relief compared to the heat he had felt during his struggle to survive in the wild. The island was isolated, untouched by human civilization, and the silence was both peaceful and terrifying. His mind raced back to the phone call that had set this entire chain of events into motion. The call that had shattered everything he thought he knew about his life. It had come 2 weeks ago, just a regular Tuesday morning. Alex had been in the office, looking over blueprints for a new project, when his phone rang. He recognized the number immediately. It was Claire, his wife of 5 years. She had been away on a business trip in New York, a city that always seemed to draw her in with its fast pace and glittering promises. Alex had always been supportive of her career, never questioning her long hours or frequent travels. But that day, the voice on the other end of the line had been different. "Alex, we need to talk," Claire had said, her voice trembling, an undercurrent of fear in her words. "Talk? What's going on?" Alex had asked, a sudden feeling of unease creeping into his chest. I've been seeing someone else," Claire confessed, the words falling out of her mouth like a bomb. Alex had stood still for a moment. As if he hadn't heard her correctly. His thoughts were a mess, his heart pounding in his chest. "What do you mean, someone else?" he had asked, trying to keep his voice steady, even though everything inside him was beginning to fall apart. "I've fallen in love with someone, Alex," Claire continued, her voice breaking. "It's over. I'm leaving you." Alex's stomach dropped. His world seemed to tilt, as if the ground beneath him was suddenly unstable. This couldn't be real. His wife, his partner, was telling him she was leaving him for another man. "Who is he?" Alex had asked, trying to keep control of the conversation, though he could feel his hands trembling. The shock had almost paralyzed him. Claire paused for a moment, almost as if she was bracing herself. "It's Mark. Mark Wheeler." The name hit him like a slap to the face. Mark Wheeler? Alex knew him. He was Claire's old college friend, charismatic, charming, and always one to challenge Alex's sense of stability with his unpredictable lifestyle. But Claire? Alex had always thought their bond was unbreakable, stronger than anything. They had shared everything, dreams, laughter, tears, the ups and downs of life. Or so Alex had thought. "Claire. You're telling me that after everything we've been through, you're choosing him? Just like that?" Alex's voice was barely a whisper, the betrayal sinking deep into his chest like a cold blade. "I'm sorry, Alex," she had said, her voice barely audible now. But I can't pretend any more. I love him. The line had gone dead shortly after that, the silence more suffocating than anything Alex had ever experienced. He had been left in his office, staring at his phone, unable to comprehend the devastation that had just unfolded. The next few days were a blur. Alex had tried to reach Claire, but she wouldn't pick up his calls. Her decision was made. She had moved in with Mark, just like that. Alex had tried everything to fix it, to talk to her, to understand why she had chosen this path. But the more he tried, the more he felt like he was sinking into a pit that he could never climb out of. And then, there was the DNA test. It came in the mail one afternoon, an envelope addressed to both him and Claire. Alex had forgotten about it until the moment he opened it. He had agreed to the test months before, during a routine checkup, to confirm something Claire had jokingly mentioned in passing, whether or not Alex was the father of their daughter, Mia. At the time, it had seemed like a silly formality. But now, holding that envelope, Alex's hands trembled. He opened the letter slowly, his eyes scanning the words that would change his life forever. The results are conclusive. Mark Wheeler is the biological father of Mia Grayson. Alex's heart stopped. His breath caught in his throat as he reread the words, over and over again. It was as if the universe was mocking him. His wife had abandoned him for another man, and now the child he had raised as his own wasn't his at all. The girl he loved, the one he had cared for, wasn't his flesh and blood. Everything had fallen apart. A week later, Alex had found himself on a plane, heading out to find answers. The betrayal, the shock, it had driven him to the edge of his sanity. The island was the last place he thought he'd end up. A friend of a friend had invited him there, promising peace and solitude, a way to escape the madness of his life. But as Alex stood on the shore, his mind racing with the revelation of the DNA test, one question kept echoing in his mind: what now? He had come here to find clarity, but all he had found was the same emptiness that gnawed at him before. His life had been turned upside down, and now, in the midst of the wild, he felt more alone than ever. As he staggered through the wreckage of the storm, Alex wondered if he would ever be able to put the pieces of his life back together. Or if he was destined to remain lost, forever chasing the shadows of a past that no longer existed. The island was eerily silent after the storm, as though it too was exhausted by the furious winds and relentless rain. Alex stood by the wreckage of the small hut he had found shelter in the night before. His clothes were still soaked, but he didn't feel the cold anymore. He was numb, his mind too full of thoughts, too clouded by anger and disbelief, to notice the chill in the air. He had barely slept. Sleep had become an impossibility, consumed by the images of Claire and Mark, entwined in a life that Alex had once thought he was a part of. The DNA test results, and covered in sand. There was no reason for it to be there. The island had no known history of wrecks or ships, at least, not that Alex had heard of. Curiosity, something that had been buried deep inside him ever since the storm, urged him forward. He approached the box cautiously, his hand resting lightly on the lid. The box was heavy, worn, and almost sealed shut with what looked like rusted metal bands. It seemed to resist him, but Alex didn't care. This was it, the moment he had been waiting for. With a deep breath, he lifted the lid. Inside, it was dark, too dark to make out anything at first. But as his eyes adjusted to the dim light of the evening, Alex could make out the faintest glimmer of something metallic. His heart pounded as he reached in, his fingers brushing against a cold, smooth surface. It was a metal chest, locked, but with no key in sight. There was a strange symbol carved into the chest, an intricate design that Alex didn't recognize. Instinctively, he pulled at the chest, trying to pry it open. But it wouldn't budge. Frustrated, he stood back for a moment, breathing heavily. And then, something strange happened. A faint noise echoed from the distance. A soft sound, almost like a voice, but it was too faint to be sure. Alex froze, his hand still resting on the chest. Was he imagining things? The isolation of the island was starting to get to him, or was there someone else here? Before he could think further, the sound grew louder. This time, Alex was sure it wasn't just in his head. There was someone else. His instincts kicked in immediately. He crouched behind a large boulder, hiding in the shadows as his heart raced. The footsteps were unmistakable now, slow and deliberate, as though whoever was walking was trying to make as little noise as possible. Alex held his breath, praying that he wouldn't be discovered. The figure emerged from the tree line, a man, dressed in tattered clothing, his face hidden under the brim of a wide hat. He didn't seem to notice Alex hiding, instead walking directly toward the box Alex had just uncovered. The man paused as he reached the box, his eyes scanning the beach as if searching for something. For a moment, Alex thought he might be caught, but the man simply knelt down and began to examine the chest. His fingers traced the symbols on the surface, his expression one of recognition. "Just as I thought," the man muttered under his breath. Alex's curiosity got the better of him. He had to know what was going on. Slowly, he stood, inching closer to the figure. The man seemed distracted, lost in his thoughts, and Alex took advantage of the moment. "What is this?" Alex asked, his voice harsh from disuse. The stranger's head snapped toward him, his eyes wide with surprise. "You." The man's face darkened, his eyes narrowing with suspicion. "You're not supposed to be here." "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to intrude," Alex said, trying to stay calm despite the pounding of his heart. "I just found this box." "What is it? What's inside?" The man stood up slowly, his expression shifting from anger to something more guarded. He stepped away from the box, putting a bit of distance between himself and Alex. "You shouldn't have opened it," the man said gravely. "It's not for you." Alex's confusion grew. "Why not? It's just a box." "It's old, yes, but what's the harm in opening it?" The man shook his head. "You don't understand. That box, that chest, is not something you can just open. It's a key." "A key to what?" Alex asked, now more intrigued than ever. The stranger's words didn't make sense, but there was something in his voice, an urgency, that made Alex want to press him further. "It's a key to everything. And now you've set it in motion," the man said, his voice heavy with meaning. "You have no idea what you've done, do you?" Alex's mind raced as he tried to piece together the man's words. What was he talking about? A key? What was inside the chest, and why was it so dangerous? But before Alex could say anything more, the man turned and began walking quickly toward the trees. "Stay away from the chest. You've already made a mistake. The rest of the answers, you'll have to find them on your own." With that, the man disappeared into the dense foliage, leaving Alex standing alone on the beach. His thoughts were a mess, a whirlwind of confusion and curiosity. What had just happened? The chest still lay on the sand, its mysterious aura more intense than ever. Alex hesitated for a moment, then made up his mind. He would open it. This was no coincidence. The island, the storm, the box, the stranger, it was all connected. And somehow, Alex knew that the answers to everything, the truth about Claire, Mark, and Mia, lay in whatever secrets this chest contained. He moved quickly, grabbing the chest and dragging it back to the shelter he had found. It would be dark soon, and Alex needed to know what was inside. Whatever it was, it had to hold the key to unraveling the mystery. As the sun disappeared behind the horizon, Alex stood alone in the dim light, the chest before him. What he was about to uncover would change his life forever. The night was long, cold, and filled with the soft sounds of the waves crashing against the shore. Alex sat beside the wooden chest, his heart pounding in anticipation. The events of the day, the encounter with the strange man, the warnings, the cryptic words, had left him restless, but also more certain than ever that he was on the cusp of something monumental. The chest wasn't just a relic of some forgotten time, it was the key to unlocking the mystery of everything that had been happening in his life. Claire. Mark. The DNA test. Mia. All of it had been a lie. But the chest, this strange object that had washed up on the shore, might just be the one thing that could explain the twisted web of deceit, betrayal, and pain that had entangled him for so long. Alex stood up, running a hand through his wet hair. He had spent hours staring at the chest, trying to understand the meaning behind the stranger's words. "It's a key," the man had said, but what did that mean? The storm had passed, leaving a quiet stillness in its wake. The winds had calmed, and the sky had cleared to reveal a sky full of stars. The island, which had seemed so desolate and lifeless earlier, now felt like a place of untold secrets, waiting to be uncovered. His eyes drifted to the chest again. The rusted metal bands that held it shut glinted faintly in the moonlight. He knew he couldn't wait any longer. He had to open it. There were answers inside, answers that would explain everything, and for the first time in what felt like weeks, Alex felt a sense of purpose. He wasn't just running from the pain of the past anymore. He was running toward the truth. With trembling hands, Alex reached down and grabbed the edge of the chest. The lid creaked as he pried it open, the sound echoing through the stillness of the night. His breath caught in his throat as he looked inside. It was empty. For a moment, Alex thought his mind was playing tricks on him. He leaned closer, squinting in the dim light, but there was nothing. Just the cold, dark interior of the chest. The contents had been removed, or maybe they had never been there in the first place. He felt his heart sink. Had he been wrong to think this chest was important? Was it just another dead end, another broken piece of his shattered reality? But then, as he shifted his gaze, something caught his eye, a small object, almost hidden beneath the wood. It was a rolled-up piece of parchment, tightly bound with a string. Alex's hand shot out, his fingers trembling as, "Only by uncovering the secrets of your past can you find peace, and only by confronting the lies that have been told to you can you truly begin to heal." Alex's breath caught in his throat. He felt as if the world had just tilted beneath him, his reality shattered beyond repair. His entire life had been a lie. The family he had known, his parents, his friends, none of it was real. His mind raced, trying to process the implications of this revelation. Who had written this letter? And why? And more importantly, how did they know everything about him? For a long time, Alex sat in silence, the letter still clutched tightly in his hands. He was stunned, his mind whirling with questions, none of which had answers. The letter spoke of lies, of deception, but it didn't explain why. Why had his life been built on a foundation of falsehoods? His thoughts drifted back to Claire. To Mark. And to Mia. Was Mia his daughter? Had she ever been? Or had the child he had raised for 5 years been another lie, another piece of the puzzle he hadn't yet seen? The uncertainty gnawed at him, threatening to pull him under. The next few days passed in a blur. Alex spent most of his time wandering the island, trying to make sense of the letter and its cryptic message. False identity. His real name, it seemed, was not Alex at all. His true name was something else entirely, something that would shake the foundations of everything he thought he knew. That was when it hit him. The letters, the strange man, the chest, the photographs, it was all leading him to one terrifying conclusion. Someone had deliberately erased his past, stolen his identity, and put him in a life that wasn't his own. Alex wasn't just the victim of a betrayal, he was the victim of something far more sinister. His entire life had been a lie, and the people who had orchestrated it were far more dangerous than he could have ever imagined. Alex's world had shifted again, this time, irreparably. The discovery of the second box, the photographs, and the adoption papers had unlocked something inside him, a dark truth that had been hidden for far too long. He had spent his entire life believing in an identity that wasn't his, living a life that wasn't meant for him. His name, his family, his memories, they had all been fabricated, a cruel illusion to keep him trapped in a web of lies. The more he thought about it, the more his chest tightened. The world felt like it was crumbling, and Alex could do nothing but watch as his reality slipped through his fingers like sand. Every time he tried to make sense of the pieces, they only seemed to lead to more confusion and pain. But the photographs, the girl with blonde hair and blue eyes, the one who resembled Mia, kept him up at night. Who was she? And why had her face been included in the box, alongside all of the papers that had confirmed his stolen identity? There was no time to waste. The cryptic letter, the strange man on the island, the chest, it was all connected. But how? What was the purpose of it all? Alex couldn't sit still any longer. The island, though beautiful, felt like a prison now. Every inch of it seemed to carry some piece of the puzzle he hadn't yet figured out. He needed answers, and the only way to find them was to go back to where it all started. The decision to leave the island had come suddenly. The weight of the chest's contents had pressed down on him, its secrets demanding to be uncovered. Alex knew he couldn't stay. He needed to get back to the mainland, to the life he had once known. But how? He had no boat, no means of communication, and no way of knowing if he could trust anyone on the outside. In the days that followed, Alex carefully examined the island, searching for any clues that might lead him to an escape. He had nothing but his instincts now, and they were sharper than ever. His mind was filled with questions, each one more pressing than the last. But despite his best efforts, he couldn't find a way off the island. It was as if the very land itself was keeping him there, forcing him to confront his past. And then, just when Alex was about to give up hope, he heard the sound of an engine in the distance. His heart leaped in his chest. Someone was here. Someone who might have the answers he so desperately needed. He ran toward the source of the noise, pushing through the dense trees, his breath coming in quick gasps. When he emerged from the brush, he found himself at the edge of a small cove. A boat, small, but sturdy-looking, was anchored at the shore. And standing on the deck of the boat, with a serious expression on his face, was the man from the beach. The stranger. The one who had warned Alex not to open the chest. Alex's pulse quickened as he walked toward the boat. The man saw him and raised a hand, signaling for him to approach. "I told you," the man said when Alex was close enough, "that you weren't supposed to open that chest." Alex shook his head, his frustration boiling over. "Who are you? What is all of this about? Why did you leave that chest for me to find? What do you know about my past?" The man looked at him solemnly, his expression unreadable. "I don't have much time. But I'll tell you what you need to know." Alex's mind raced. He couldn't hold back any longer. He needed answers, and he needed them now. "Get on the boat," the man said, his voice quiet but firm. "We can't talk here. Not safely." Alex hesitated for a moment but then nodded. He had no other choice. The boat ride to the mainland was slow, the engine humming steadily in the background as the two men sat in silence. The stranger hadn't said a word since they had left the island. Alex, though exhausted, couldn't stop himself from watching the man, trying to make sense of what had just happened. He wanted to shout at the stranger, demand answers, but the man's calm presence seemed to keep him in check. There was something almost reassuring about the way he carried himself, like someone who had seen it all and wasn't shaken by anything. Alex couldn't decide if he trusted the man or not, but right now, he was the only one who had any information. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the boat reached the docks of a small town. The man didn't speak as he guided the boat to a secluded area, away from the busy pier. Alex climbed out and followed him to a quiet corner of the town, where the stranger led him into a modest house near the edge of the water. Once inside, the man closed the door behind them and gestured for Alex to sit. Alex did so, his heart still racing. I know you have questions, the man said, sitting down across from him. And I'll answer them. But first, you need to understand something. This is bigger than you, Alex. It's bigger than any of us. Alex's eyebrows furrowed. What do you mean? You've been part of a much larger plan, one that has been in motion for years. You were chosen, but not for the reasons you think. Your life wasn't a random set of circumstances. It was orchestrated. Everything that happened to you, from the moment you were born, was designed to put you where you are now. Alex's mind swirled with disbelief. Who could possibly do that? Why? Mia's not my daughter? Alex had asked, his voice cracking when the words left his mouth. He had hoped, prayed even, that the man would say it wasn't true. But the answer had been brutal, heart-shattering. No. She's not. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. The stranger's revelation had come as a shock that Alex was still struggling to comprehend. Everything that had been familiar, his relationship with Claire, his life as an architect, even his name, was part of an elaborate illusion. A lie. Alex leaned forward, his hands trembling as they rested on his knees. Why? Why would anyone do this? Why me? The stranger sighed, a tiredness in his eyes, but something else too, regret, perhaps. He rubbed his face with his hands, then looked at Alex as if deciding how much to say. It's not about why you. It's about why at all. You see, Alex, there are organizations out there, ones that have been manipulating people for years. Not just for political power, or wealth, but for control. You were chosen, but it wasn't because of who you are, but because of what you could be. They needed someone to live a life, someone they could control, someone who could never find out the truth. Your life was an experiment, a test. Alex's mind reeled, the words feeling as though they were bouncing off the walls of his skull. He could barely focus. But who are these people? Who's behind all of this? They are too many to name, the stranger replied, his voice low. The organizations involved are vast and shadowy. Some are government-backed, some are private corporations, and some are even international syndicates. But they all work together under one goal: control the masses, manipulate the population, make people believe in the realities they create. You were never supposed to question your existence, Alex. That's why they gave you a family, a life, an identity. It's all been planned. Alex shook his head, not fully able to accept the enormity of what the stranger was saying. So what's the point of all this? What did they want from me? From Claire? From Mia? The man paused, looking at him as though considering how to answer. Finally, he spoke. You were never meant to be just a person in the system. They needed you to become a part of something much bigger. A vessel for their manipulation. They controlled your life to observe how someone like you would react. They needed a person they could shape, mold, and then discard when they were done. And now that you've found the truth, well, they've set their sights on you again. Alex could feel his heart pounding in his chest, the weight of his situation sinking deeper into his bones. He felt as if he had been plunged into the darkness of a world he didn't know existed, and he wasn't sure if he could ever find his way out. He stood abruptly, his mind racing, desperate to escape the conversation, the room, the stranger's oppressive presence. I need to find Mia, he said urgently, his voice thick with. The man's expression darkened. There are organizations, powerful ones, who control the fates of people like you. People who are in the right place at the right time. You've been part of an experiment, Alex. A test to see how far they could go, how much they could manipulate, and how well they could hide the truth. Alex's head spun. What do you mean? What kind of experiment? The experiment is about control. About creating a world where the truth is manipulated, where people like you never get to know who they really are. You were never meant to be Alex Grayson. That name, that family, they were assigned to you. It's all part of a larger network. And Mia, the girl you think is your daughter, she's not even related to you. She was part of the experiment too. Alex's stomach churned. You're saying Mia isn't my daughter? No, the man said, shaking his head. She isn't. And the real question is, why do you think they've been keeping you in the dark? Why do you think they let you live a life that was carefully controlled? Because you were never supposed to find out. Never supposed to question who you were. The room seemed to close in around Alex. He couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Every word the man spoke seemed to shatter what was left of his reality. I know this is a lot to take in, the man continued, his voice softening. But you need to understand. Your life, your family, it was all fabricated. And now, it's time for you to take control. The chest you found, the letter, it's part of your path. There's more to learn, Alex. There are more pieces of the puzzle. Alex sat frozen in disbelief, the weight of the man's words sinking in. His life wasn't his own. Mia wasn't his daughter. And everything he thought he knew, his identity, his family, his memories, was a lie. The world had stopped making sense. Alex sat on the edge of the worn leather armchair in the stranger's home, the weight of the man's words pressing down on him. His chest felt tight, his breathing shallow. The pieces of his life, the fabric of his entire existence, had been torn apart, scattered like so many fragments in the wind. The man across from him had told him everything, or at least a part of it. The rest, Alex knew, was still locked away, hidden from him in ways he couldn't even begin to understand. His life had been controlled, manufactured, and all this time, he had been a puppet in a game that had never been his to play. The stranger, whose name Alex still didn't know, had explained everything in a manner that made the situation sound like a story too bizarre to be real. But every word had struck him with a deep, chilling truth. His identity had been stolen. His family, his so-called parents, had been assigned to him. His name had been forged. Mia, the little girl he had raised and loved as his own daughter, wasn't even his flesh and blood. The truth of it all felt like a knife twisting inside him, and he could hardly breathe through the pain. Emotion. She's my daughter. She's all I have left. The man didn't move. Mia isn't your daughter, Alex. I know it's hard to hear, but you need to understand the full picture. She's not the key to finding your past. The key is you. Your real identity. The truth about where you come from. Alex stopped, looking over his shoulder at the stranger, confusion and anger written across his face. What do you mean, the truth about where I come from? I don't understand. This is too much, everything's too much. The stranger nodded slowly. It's a lot to process, but there are pieces you haven't seen yet. And you need to find them. The key to your past is hidden in plain sight, but you'll need to look beyond what's right in front of you. The organizations that orchestrated your life, they're watching. And you're not the only one who's been manipulated. The room felt colder now, the air thick with secrets Alex didn't want to know. His life had always felt like it was missing something, but this was beyond anything he could have imagined. Where do I even start? Alex whispered, his voice barely audible. The stranger leaned forward. Start with the locket. Alex's eyes widened. The locket. He had almost forgotten about it, buried at the bottom of the chest he had found on the island. The locket had been part of the second box, nestled among the papers, photographs, and adoption documents. But Alex hadn't looked at it closely, too consumed by the revelation of the photos and the adoption papers. The locket? Alex asked, his mind still clouded by the haze of his emotions. Yes, the stranger said, his voice steady. You've already seen it. But you didn't understand what it was for. Open it, and you'll understand everything. The locket holds the final piece of the puzzle. Alex's hand instinctively moved to his neck, where the locket now hung. He hadn't taken it off since he had first found it, as though something within him had known it was important. His fingers closed around it, and he pulled it from under his shirt. The locket was small, silver, with intricate engravings along its surface. It didn't look like much, just a trinket, but Alex could feel the weight of it, the way it seemed to hum with significance. He unclasped the locket, and when he opened it, his breath caught in his throat. Inside, there was a picture. A photograph. A woman. The same woman who had appeared in the photos Alex had seen in the box. The blonde-haired girl in the photographs that Alex had been shown, the one who looked so much like Mia. But this was different. This woman wasn't just someone from the past. She looked familiar. In fact, she looked like someone Alex knew intimately, someone who had been a part of his life for years. It was Claire. The picture showed Claire as a young woman, standing in front of a house, smiling. She was holding a little girl in her arms, the same girl from the other photographs. The resemblance was undeniable. The girl's hair, the blue eyes, it was all there. The woman in the photo wasn't just a stranger. She was Claire. And the girl in her arms? Mia. Alex's head spun. This couldn't be possible. He stared at the picture, his mind racing, the reality of the situation hitting him like a freight train. The stranger watched Alex's reaction carefully, as though he had anticipated the shock. "Claire," Alex whispered, his voice a mix of confusion and disbelief. "What is this? Why is Claire in the picture with her? Why do I have this?" The stranger's face grew hard. "That locket belonged to your real mother. Claire wasn't just part of the illusion, they used her to keep you from remembering who you really are. You were supposed to be raised as someone else, but they swapped you with another child. Mia wasn't even meant to be in your life. She wasn't yours to raise." Alex felt the room spin, his world tilting on its axis once more. The woman in the photo, Claire, was somehow tied to everything that had happened to him, and Mia, the child he had loved, was a part of a conspiracy that was beyond anything he could understand. His breath hitched in his chest as he tried to process the enormity of what he had just uncovered. "This is too much," Alex said, his voice breaking. "I can't take it anymore." The stranger stood, stepping toward Alex. "You have to, Alex. You have to face the truth if you want to stop them from manipulating your life any longer. Your real family, your real past, it's out there. And if you don't find it, they'll make sure you never do." The weight of everything Alex had learned pressed down on him like an iron cage, and for the first time in his life, he felt truly trapped. His life, everything he had ever known, was a construct, nothing more than a puppet show orchestrated by forces that played with people's destinies as if they were toys. Claire. Mia. His parents. None of it was real. None of it had ever been his to control. The photograph in the locket, Claire as a young woman with the little girl who resembled Mia, was like a final piece of the puzzle falling into place. The truth had been right in front of him all along, but the lie was so intricate, so well woven into the fabric of his life, that he hadn't been able to see it. Claire, the woman he had once loved, had been part of this deception. She was in on it from the start. He could still hear the stranger's words echoing in his mind. "They needed you to believe the lie, Alex. They needed you to stay in the dark. You were never supposed to ask questions, never supposed to uncover the truth." But now that he had, what was left for him? How could he ever go back to the life he once had? How could he go back to Mia? She had been raised as his daughter, but everything that he had thought was real, everything that connected them, was a lie. Alex stared at the photo of Claire and the young girl, his heart heavy with the weight of the years he had spent building a life around something that wasn't even his. It was as if the world he had known had been swallowed up by a void, leaving only an aching emptiness in its place. How could he face Mia? How could he tell her that everything she knew about their family was fake? The stranger had told him there were still pieces of the puzzle to uncover, and Alex knew he had no choice but to follow through. There were still questions that needed answering. What was the ultimate purpose of the experiment? Why had they chosen him? And most importantly, where did he go from here? With a sense of grim determination, Alex stood up, clutching the locket tightly in his hand. He wasn't about to let the truth slip away from him. The stranger had given him a path, and Alex was going to follow it, no matter how painful or disorienting it might be. He turned to the stranger, who had been silently watching him all this time, waiting for him to process everything. The man's expression remained unchanged, stoic, but there was something in his eyes, a mixture of regret and resolve. "I need to know everything," Alex said, his voice steady despite the emotional chaos that roiled within him. "I need to understand why they did this to me. Why Mia? Why Claire?" The stranger nodded. "You're ready now. The truth is out there, Alex. But it's not just about you. It's about everyone who's been manipulated. Your life, your family, was just one of many experiments. And it all comes down to control. They might start to unravel the truth." Alex's mind reeled as the implications of the stranger's words sank in. This wasn't just about him anymore. It was about an entire system, a network of people who had been operating in the shadows, controlling lives, manipulating entire societies. Alex had only just scratched the surface, and already, he could feel the enormity of what he was facing. "And what about Claire?" Alex asked, his voice hoarse. "Was she a part of it all along?" The stranger's expression softened. "Claire wasn't given a choice, Alex. She was manipulated too. They chose her, just like they chose you. She thought she was living a normal life. She was playing her part in the experiment, but she didn't know the full extent of it. When she met you, it wasn't by chance. It was part of the plan." Alex felt his chest tighten. His heart ached for Claire, the woman he had once loved, and who had been caught up in something she had no control over. But at the same time, anger flared inside him. How could she have been so blind? How could she have accepted all of this? She didn't know what was really happening? Alex asked, his voice trembling. "She didn't know," the stranger confirmed. "But now that you know the truth, you have a choice. You can either walk away and let the system continue to control your life, or you can fight back and try to expose what they've done." Alex stood up, his fists clenched at his sides. He couldn't walk away. Not now. Not after everything he had learned. He wasn't going to let these shadowy figures control his life any longer. He wasn't going to let them keep Mia in the dark, or Claire, or anyone else who had been caught in their web of lies. "I'll fight back," Alex said, his voice firm. "I don't care what it takes. I'll expose them. I'll make sure the world knows the truth." The stranger's face softened, a faint trace of approval in his eyes. "I knew you'd say that. But be warned, Alex. They'll come after you. They won't let you go that easily. And they have resources, people who will do anything to keep this secret buried." Alex didn't flinch. "I've lost everything already. What else do I have to lose?" The days that followed were a blur of preparations. Alex knew that the road ahead would be long and dangerous, but he was ready. The stranger had given him all the information he needed to start: names, locations, contacts. The first step was to reach out to people who had been part of the network, those who had been working behind the scenes to expose the organizations that had controlled his life. It wasn't going to be easy. There were powerful forces working against him, and Alex knew that he couldn't do this alone. He had to rely on others, people who had been victims like him, people who had managed to escape the system and now fought to bring it down. As Alex set out to find these people, he couldn't help but think of Mia. She wasn't his daughter, not by blood, but she was his. She was his responsibility. And he wasn't going to let her live in the shadow of this lie any longer. The journey was going to be hard, but Alex had no doubt about one thing: he was going to fight. He was going to fight for the truth. He was going to fight for his life. And most of all, he was going to fight for Mia. As the sun began to set over the horizon, casting long shadows over the small town, Alex took a deep breath, ready to step into the unknown. The battle had only just begun, but he wasn't afraid. The truth was out there. And he was going to find it.